So here we go again.
Here we go again. Yep, no, this is Brent and James doing a little blog or podcast or vlog with a V, whatever you call it. So out there, high out there in internet land. We're just hanging out here today in North Glenmore Park talking about a few things. James, I actually thought that it might be interesting to talk about your experience in Zaire, or the Congo, I think it's called.
Well, now it's called the Democratic Republic of the Congo. When I was there, it was called Zaire. It was just at the time when President Mobutu was leaving, and Joseph Kabila, who was from the eastern part of Zaire, had...
What years was that?
Oh gosh, that would have been 1986, 87.
Oh yeah,
somewhere in there. Yeah.
And what brought you to Zaire?
Well, I was vice president at that time of a company, and we did wireless communications, and we were kind of ahead of the game a little bit. That we used a technology called spread spectrum technology, which allowed you to transmit data. It was very common in the oil industry, but it also allowed you to do some voice over or voice connection too as well. And so we had signed a contract in London, England with a chap who was originally born in Zaire, but he was Belgian. And we signed a contract with them folks to provide them with some wireless links to various locations they had throughout Kinshasa, which was the capital of Zaire, because the communication systems were non-existent. I mean, the phone system worked maybe one day a month. So anyway, we went there, and that was quite an experience, I'll tell you.
Who did you go with when you went down there?
Well, there was the engineer for the company and myself, because I knew the technology. I had used it prior in another company. Actually, when I had my own company, we used it for collecting data from wellheads back to a central location and then transmit it from there back to head offices. So the technology had been around, just not used properly. So anyway, to make a long story short, it was an experience in the context of, it was kind of funny. I must tell you this little story, because Joseph Kabila, who was ultimately killed by his own bodyguards, and his son took over, who is the president to this day, Joseph Kabila. They came from the east of Zaire, and they spoke Swahili, and the civil servants, if you could call them that, spoke French in Kinshasa.
Oh, because the Belgians were French.
Yes. Well,
okay.
They have a dialect, but it's French. In essence, So anyway, it was really quite interesting to watch these people try to communicate. What happened was that Laurent Kabila was a rebel from the east, and he basically overrun Mobutu, but Mobutu was smart enough to leave. He had a great big mansion in France and I guess some other places, but typical in those days African leaders, and I hope I don't get slandered for this, but they basically
were corrupt.
And
so they were taking from the country and...
Oh yes, you should have seen his palace, my God. I mean, it was like nothing you would see here. I mean, they had the best of everything, but Laurent Kabila, when he took over, for some reason, I guess he must have ticked off one of his bodyguards because he got killed by them. But they liked the son. So the son's still there to this day. Some people tell me that it has gotten somewhat improved, but the old Zaire, the DNC, DRC now it's called, they have some of the best minerals in the world. I mean, diamonds, gold, all kinds of other things. There's a lot of Canadian, British conglomerates there, but they have their own security systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Talk a little bit about arriving in Kinshasa and just moving from literally from the airplane through that security apparatus.
Well, there is no security apparatus. Vis-a-vis. No, they land the plane quite a distance away from the terminal, simply because, they didn't want the planes being damaged. You have to understand, the people there, their whole entertainment was watching these planes coming in and out. They had no money.
Oh, really?
You know, they were, they
Yeah.
were basically living from hand to mouth, whatever they could get their hands on. But anyway, we came in by a Swiss Air, and we parked off on the tarmac, and we got off the plane. We had to go to a table, and there was a guy there that we had to show our passports to, but there was also a representative there from the people that we were dealing with, and they just looked at them briefly. But when we got into what you would call their customs room, the agent, if you will, that was with us, took all our passports and a pile of money like this.
Really?
And he gave it to the customs agent. Stamp,
Basically
stamp.
bought your way through.
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
customs.
It was common. It's still common to this day.
Yeah,
I think.
you have to
to some-
bribe to even get into the
Oh, yeah,
country.
that's right, and bribe your way out too.
Wow.
But anyway, we got in, but we were warned when you get off the plane to, take anything you have around your neck off, because a hand will come out right from the crowd and it'll disappear real quick.
Oh, really? So
Yeah, you basically didn't have any jewelry on at all because it would be gone. The people were so poor, you just couldn't believe.
Yeah.
But we had, when we got finished with the customs agent, the people we were working with, they had their own security apparatus, so we had bodyguards, and we went out into a van, and we all got in the van, and we went to this complex that had 12-foot high fences, about a foot and a half thick, with towers on all four corners, with guys up there with automatic rifles.
Really?
So
This was right in Kinshasa?
right in the capital, yeah.
And whose place was that you were staying?
Well, I don't want to mention the individual's name.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be proper, but it was the company that we were working
Okay.
with.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, he was obviously well-to-do or well-connected.
Oh, very
within the
well,
country.
very well to do. He was born there. His
Yeah.
parents were Belgian, but he, had dual citizenship. I guess
Yeah.
you'd call it that. But they had a very good business going. I won't get into that in too big a detail either.
So
But-
what did you guys actually do install the?
Yeah, we set up the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we left.
So it was what kind of system was it?
Well, it was basically a forerunner to cell phone system, if you want to put it in that terminology. Only we had to stack the radio transceivers
Yeah.
for voice interaction back and forth. It was
Yeah.
an unlicensed frequency, which still is available today.
Yeah.
But they needed to talk to their people that were running these warehouses, if you will, and other businesses that they had going.
So it was all just within Kinshasa.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There was no long distance thing. It had
Yeah.
about a 5-kilometer range.
Yeah.
So and they were relatively close to where their main compound was anyway. But they
Yeah.
just wanted to have a secure system that they could talk back and forth with.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you end up going down there to Kinshasa like a couple times?
No, I only went the one time.
Yeah.
But I have been in other parts of Africa. I've been in Tanzania. I've been in Kenya, and I've been.
Were you there on business too?
Yes,
And-
yeah, all of those were business. So I got to see the Serengeti Plain as an example in Tanzania for free.
Wow, that's great.
Because you've heard the word manana, of course, we all heard that, but in
Yeah.
Africa, when you're meeting with a government minister, he may decide that he's not going to meet you today,
Oh, right.
and it may be a week later.
Yeah.
So we figured, well, this guy's not, we
Yeah.
can't meet him for a week. He postponed the date, so we took off in this Mercedes-Benz,
Oh,
believe
really?
it or not. And when you go, the Serengeti's up on a plane,
Yeah.
and you got to go up the road up, and here's this white guy sitting in the back of a Mercedes-Benz with two colored guys driving. They weren't black,
Yeah.
they were colored people. I won't tell you any more than that. But we're going up this road, and they're coming down in their four-wheel drive Range
wow.
Rovers, and they couldn't believe
Oh my
there's
goodness.
this white guy going up in a Mercedes. But
So you drove around the Serengeti in a Mercedes.
yeah. So we went to Lake Manyara, which was an old English resort at one time. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. and it sat up above the Rift Valley.
Oh yeah.
And the Rift Valley runs basically from Somalia all the way to what would be present day, oh Christ, I think of the country. But anyway, you could see the elephants down
Yeah.
below wandering around, and it was really
Wow.
quite nice, really quite something. Yeah. That was
Yeah.
a long time ago, though. But I have pictures of it, some that
Yeah.
I managed to salvage over the years.
So you were in both Kenya. That was in Kenya, and then you were in Tanzania as well.
Yeah, yeah.
What is it? What's that coastal city? Kinshasa. Not
No, it's
Kinshasa.
Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And Nairobi,
Oh, okay.
of course, is the
Starts with
capital
an
of Kenya.
M or something, doesn't it? That coastal city.
Mombasa.
Mombasa.
Oh,
Isn't
yeah.
that in Kenya?
It's in Kenya. Yeah.
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 Did you go through there?
Yeah, we went through there on our way. We
Did you
drove.
see the beach and all that?
Oh, well, the beach runs all the way from Somalia to all the way to South Africa.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's pure white sand in the Indian Ocean.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So you stayed there for a while, right on the Indian Ocean?
Oh, yeah. I actually, in Dar es Salaam, I stayed at a beach house, which was originally built by the British. Just a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it was quite an interesting thing. You know, interesting thing. There was a resort that we went to occasionally, and it wasn't exactly the nicest place in the world because at that time the PLO were based. Yasser Arafat was based there
Where in?
Dar es Salaam, but he was staying at this resort.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that was an interesting thing. We went in and I was told point blank, just don't look at them. You know?
Really?
Yeah. That was before he was allowed back into Palestine. You know?
Yeah.
So he was.
Really?
Yeah. It was an interesting
Did
thing.
you actually see him?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He was walking around the resort.
No, he was sitting down with a bunch of his colleagues. We were
Oh, yeah.
farther away, but there was other people in there as well. But you know.
Did he have that famous checked colored?
Oh yeah.
Whatever you
he
call
wore
it,
that.
headgear?
Yeah, he wore it his whole life. You know,
Yeah.
Basically, whatever he started from. But what I thought was really well, and in those days it was a very dangerous place. I mean,
Yeah.
you watched your P's and Q's or you'd be dead pretty quick.
Yeah.
The funny thing I saw, Kanduchi Beach House, that's the name of it, I just remembered.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that there were signs still there, whites only, on this part of the beach, and the signs were there. And in Dar es Salaam itself, and just on the coast, you know, the city goes right on the coast.
Yeah.
They had great big round concrete slabs that were about that thick or so, with steel hooks in them,
Yeah.
and that's where they ran the chains through when they picked up the slaves and
Really?
took them onto the ships. And there's a big fallacy out there in the world today that everybody thinks that the British and the French and Spanish all went in and got them. That's not true at all.
Yeah.
The Arab traders were the ones that would go in and hustle up the slaves,
Oh, really?
bring them to the coast. The ships would come in,
Yeah.
and they would buy them
Yeah.
from the Arabs, you know, and they would load them on the ships and away they'd go.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen even the results when I was in the Bahamas. They had built steps up so that they came in at low tide. They could go
Yeah.
up. And the amazing thing was about that, they all had made their little, the slaves had made their little dolls, if you want to call them something. They all faced
Oh.
out over the ocean
Really?
because they wanted to go home.
Go to Africa.
And that
Yeah.
was the only way that they could, you know, history sometimes doesn't tell the whole truth.
Yeah.
You know, it gets distorted for everybody's interest until you actually see it. You know, then you get a real idea. And I never
Yeah.
realized until I was there that the British never, or the French or the Spanish,
Yeah.
never went inland. The Arabs would
They
come
would
down.
just go to the coast, and the
Yeah.
Arabs would round up
Yeah,
the slaves.
the Arabs
bring
would
them
come
down.
down the coast from what is
Yeah.
present-day Somalia.
Yeah.
And they'd come down and they would round them up and bring them
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Quite interesting.
Send them off to America.
Oh
or
no,
to
they
the
sent
Caribbean.
all
or-
over the Caribbean, all into
Yeah.
South America.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the Bahamas was a British colony,
Yeah.
and they would unload them there, and they basically went up and they were auctioned off,
Yeah.
and the buyers would come and
Yeah.
take them wherever. You know, Trinidad is, you know, 50 or 55% black, and the other part East Indian.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, some of those slaves got traded 5, 6, 7 times.
Yeah, it was basically a commodity.
Yeah, it was.
And
yeah.
you traded in these people as workers, as slaves, whatever jobs they did.
Exactly.
It was pretty brutal. And
terrible.
when it was time to move on, the owners just sold them off.
Yeah, they were
to
just,
the next guy.
Yeah, they was just like nothing more than a piece of meat. You know, that's all
Yeah.
they were. They had
Yeah.
no rights, no nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, it's a remarkable history, really.
And on those ships coming from Africa, 30% of them would die.
Yeah.
You know, because they would put them in like cattle into the
Yeah.
holds.
Yeah.
You know, they would give them the bare minimum amount of food. They would die from, you know, all kinds of diseases. You know, and they'd just throw the bodies overboard.
God, what a forced natural selection.
Well,
you know, you had to be tough as nails.
Those that survived,
survive.
it was really the strong survived, the weak didn't. That's all there was to it.
Yeah, and I guess the same is true for all the years of slavery in the U.S. It was only those strong slaves that actually survived.
Well, absolutely.
And went on. So, I mean, that's a topic for another discussion, but it seems like it's actual fact,
But it's not,
historical fact.
Yeah.
That was a kind of a natural selection to only pick the strongest, biggest, hardiest people. It was not right, it was wrong, but that actually created the modern black man in America is a descendant of that.
Oh, sure they are.
Of that terrible history.
Sure. But they, you know, they wasn't just the U.S. They were shipped all over the Caribbean, all over South America. Not all over South America. Quite a few of the South American countries.
Yeah.
But you know, the biggest majority, of course, did go to the Caribbean and to the U.S. because they were. Caribbean was British colonies and you know whatever have
for
you.
sure. Well, I guess that wraps things up for today. We
That's
got
your history lesson.
More other things to talk. Thank you, James, for chatting about Zaire. Amazing experiences in there in Kenya, Tanzania, and so if you want to subscribe, hit the button down below. Other than that, we'll see you later.
Bye bye. That was a good talk.